Hello, friends. So I think we are live, and I have a very, very special guest today with us. We have completed one whole year, and I wanted to celebrate with a very special guest. So we have Craig Campbell with us. He's from London, UK. It's very early for Craig. Thank you, Craig.
No worries. Always a pleasure to come on and speak to you.
Yeah, so quickly a little background about Craig, who needs no background. Actually, Craig has over 17 years of experience in SEO. He has been in industry since really young age. He has seen Google's change. He has seen organic change. He's big in SEO. So if you are in digital marketing and are doing SEO, you would know him. I got to meet Craig last year in SEM Rush conference, um, where the inspiration of YouTube channel came in, and from there, I think it made a lot of sense to have him to celebrate 1 year anniversary.
Thanks. It's as I say, I thoroughly enjoyed the Same Rush conference in India, and glad that I was able to maybe give you an idea to do a YouTube channel. It's always always good to see what other people are doing and try and add it into what you do. It's always good to try these things. So, and I'm glad that you've got success with it as well.
Yeah, and I would like to tell you guys that Craig has also started his YouTube channel, I think just 1 year back, and his YouTube channel is a huge success. It has crossed 50,000 subscribers. Craig has also got a deal, which is a six-figure deal, sponsorship for his YouTube channel, and all the lovely things that I would want Craig to talk about. Mm, uh, and just about the topic of this particular day is communities. I think communities is the way to move forward as we grow deeper and deeper into virtual ecosystems, because otherwise almost everything is a commodity. What special value addition are you doing to people's lives, and in what ways? So I think communities and forming your tribes, shared values and rituals is key to success for a business in today's era. And being connected to Craig, I realized that Craig drives communities across platforms. You see him on LinkedIn, you see him on YouTube, his email list, his websites. He has a huge tribe which is super engaged. A lot of people have communities, a lot of businesses have communities, but they are not engaged as I have seen Craig engage with his audience. People know about his life. His beautiful family. Charlie, I don't know if he will be joining us on show, but he has a cute little son, and we connect with these stories, with very real and human stories, with real people. And I think Craig is doing wonderfully. And Craig, I will leave the table to you to talk a little bit about your communities.
Yeah. So as you say, I try and engage across several platforms, and I think that's hugely important because not everyone uses YouTube. Some people prefer to use LinkedIn. Some people prefer Facebook. You know, TikTok even. I've given that a bash, and not hugely successful on TikTok. But as a digital marketer, promoting your educational videos and everything else is really important to do if that's what you are. If people are looking to you to give advice or training or whatever it may be, then it's important to give them that information across multiple channels. And that's why I do have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email lists, website, and everything else. But I think you can't just rely on SEO to make you the big name. And I know in years gone past, Neil Patel, Brian Dean, Matthew Woodward have all pretty much used their blogs to give information out. And I know they're now, they have got videos and stuff as well, but they're not that engaged across all of these channels, and it's quite hard to be super engaged with a bigger audience, because it does take a lot of time and effort to speak to people, and it can pose problems in itself as well. I wake up every day and I've got 500 plus messages, across all of the platforms, and it's people who say, "Can you look at my website? Can you give me an idea on what's wrong with that?" And now I'm finding it difficult and slightly overwhelming with the amount of volume that comes, because I think people just want to say, "Craig, can you just have a quick look at this and tell me what's wrong?" And the reality is, I've got a life out with SEO, and I cannot look at every single person's website. And then you don't do that for someone, and they get upset, and you're rude, you're ignorant, blah 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 blah. And it's not about that. It's just, I think when you grow a community, everyone wants a piece of you, and it's important to give as much information away as you possibly can. And that's why, I decided to do 2 live question and answer sessions a week, and things like that, because at that point, if you really do want me to answer your question, you can come to a live question and answer session, which is completely free, and you can pick my brains at that point. But I'm
Yeah.
trying to offer value whilst not have that bombardment. And I think people are finding value in that, and doing live shows and just being there to ask stupid questions, if you like. There's no such thing as a stupid question. People just want to know what's going on, or what's going on with their website, or what the latest updates involving, or whatever it might be. And it's important for me to try and keep these guys up to date, because for whatever reason, they see me as that guy, the go-to guy for that. And it can be hard work, but it's rewarding as well. As I say, or as you say, I've had a YouTube channel I've had the channel for a number of years, but I would never really added anything to it until March 2020, when lockdown happened. And I'm going to share my screen just for a
Yeah.
second. And
Yeah. In fact, Greg, I think one common question for a lot of people is, why should one build community? I have had conversations with my small communities where people are running small businesses, and I say, a very good way to sell your product and create value, rather, is to build community. And people come with this point of view that, it takes a lot of energy to, build community, because you just can't go and broadcast in a community. You have to be there, present there, act like a human, act like their friend, and not just act, perhaps act is a wrong word, but play the role of a friend, a help, sometimes a friend, a guide, a mentor, someone who is learning. You have to play different roles. You have to be human in a community. So I
yeah,
think a lot of people say, why to build a community? Because it's really hard. And I would want to hear from you that how building a community helps and how it has helped you.
I mean, how it helps me is it keeps me sharp in terms of SEO and what I do. So, when you've got people asking you questions, now I might not know the answer to everything, but people are coming to me with questions or problems or whatever it might be, and I might not know the answer instantly, but it helps me understand that there is a problem there, and it just keeps my knowledge sharp. Because if someone says to me, "Craig, this is happening to me," or "That's happening to me," and I don't know the answer, I'm going to go away and do research on it, and it just keeps me really sharp in terms of problems. But it also helps me content wise massively, because one thing about building a community, if you like, is offering the right advice and the right type of videos, because you have to understand the level of knowledge that you're preaching to. And if I was to go super technical to a very basic audience, people are going to switch off, they're not going to be engaged. And it's important for me to speak to, understand, and then implement that information on the videos or on the blogs or Facebook groups or whatever it might be. So it's very helpful not only from keeping me sharp, but it keeps me giving me content ideas. So if someone says, Craig, I don't understand, for example, what you do when you buy an age domain. What's your process like? And I'm like, yeah, I've probably not explained that well enough in previous videos. So here is the process. Here is why I do this, that, the next thing. And there's tons of people that ask me tons of different questions, and it allows me to then make sure that the information that I do provide is much more to the point and deliver what people are actually looking for. So that is where it helps me massively. But obviously, I've been there. I've been at the bottom of the ladder, if you like, and I've looked at other people. Back when I was learning, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't what we have today, but I was on forums and stuff like that trying to ask people questions, and I know what it's like to be ignored, and or people misleading you, and all of these kind of things. I spent probably 5 years of my life listening to the wrong people, and probably a wasted 5 years, if you like, but I see it as an apprenticeship. And for me, I try and make sure that you guys that do watch anything I do can do things quicker, more efficiently, and try and just cut corners in terms of time. I try and not give any fluff, and for me, it works really well. And my channels have grown massively, and even the following that I've got speaking at conferences has grown massively because I've always tried to offer something different and something more than most of the other speakers. And again, even out in India, every single person that came up to me in India, I took time to speak to, and I could have hidden in the VIP room and drunk beer or whatever. But I think it's really important to just speak to people and learn things. And there's a lot of smart people across, not just in India, across the world. And every time I get the opportunity, whether it's America, whether it's India or whatever, I want to talk to those people and see if there's something that I'm missing that these guys are doing really smart. And I think everywhere you go, you always pick up something. You guys in India are really big on, I would say, technical software, work ethic. There's lots of different things that maybe other people don't see value in Indians. Some people think Indians can't speak proper English. They're just, waste of time.
Yeah.
But most of the software and SaaS and stuff like that, they end up coming from Indian guys. So why the hell would you not want to pick their brains and understand what they do and take advantage of anything that they do good? And as I say, I'm not just saying that for India, all over the world. You know what? You go to Eastern Europe, and again, people think, oh, these idiots can't speak proper English. Their language is crap. Yeah, of course, the language is not their first language, so maybe don't get them writing content, but they have so many other skills that you can utilize and better
Yeah.
your stuff. So that's why at every conference I'll take time to speak to people, because they're smart people across the world, and they do have their individual skills that are really good. I'm not the best writer in the world either, and I'm a native English speaker. I just wasn't educated to that standard of being able to write, really good stuff. So it's a weakness I've got, and I employ a content writer. So we all have weaknesses, and I think you've got to focus on the strong points wherever you go, whether it's you yourself. I'm really good at a lot of stuff, and I've got to focus on that. And anything that I do have a weakness with, I can outsource, delegate that on, or train to become better at it. And I think, as I say, when you go to these communities, try and exploit those communities for all you can. On a personal level, go to India, make contacts, make this, make that, because I can now reach out to people in India and get help. Because
Yeah.
I was at that conference and I met a lot of people who have kept in touch. And if I need something from someone in India, and I can just phone a few guys, and hopefully they would know the right person to go to. So building those contacts and building your network is also really important, because um, that is where I would be able to stand out from maybe someone else who is thinking about maybe using an Indian to build a tool or something, and they go and get the wrong guy. Whereas hopefully the guys that came, because the way I see this is, right, the people that spent the money and the time to come to the same Rush conference are those that are hungry and eager and probably
Right.
do reasonably well. There's a billion people in India. Only 2,000 or whatever came to that conference. 2,000 people who were interested in the same thing that I'm interested in. So those clearly are guys with passion, hunger, money to travel to the event and everything else. So fine well that audience is your audience, like your people.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of people go there and they don't engage with the people, and they don't, bother. And I'm like,
They're more like speakers and yeah, yeah. So actually, I would like to take few seconds and talk about because I can read the comments and a lot of people are really excited to talk about SEO with you, and we'll
Mhm.
take those SEO related questions, of course, towards the end of the video. I would just like to take a moment and talk about communities and explain to our audience what communities are. Communities are a bunch of people who may or may not be just limited to Facebook groups, but communities can be on WhatsApp. Community can be on TikTok. Communities can be on your email subscriber list. What we mean by community is a group of people, your small tribe, a set of people who I would say often read your content, follow you, engage with your content, and have shared values. Here, a very wonderful example that Craig gave of a SEMrush conference. At SEMrush conference, over 2,000 people from across India came in. It was a conference around search engine, and the people who came there, I think Craig was one of the very few people who interacted across the floor with all sort of people. People came, and I know people were rushing to click pictures. They were on social media, people were sharing his pictures with them and talking about how excited they were to meet him. I think that's what builds connection, and that's what builds community. Because if you don't engage with that ecosystem, if you are present on say Instagram, that's your community. You need to go out and speak to people. You can't just be a broadcaster putting stuff on your stories and not interacting with the audience. If you have a Facebook fan page, or if you have a Facebook group, or if you have email list, that's your community, and you need to get involved and engaged with them. You need to interact with them to build a strong community. So yeah, a lot of discussion we will have around social communities, because that's really huge and a lot of people wish to talk about. But I just wanted to cover what's community, so that a lot of people who have some doubts will be clear what we're talking about. With that, I think, Greg, we have the very first question by Saurabh. It says, I work in gifting industry. Can you share some ideas um, on how to get started with communities?
Um, Gifting industry. So, I mean, you've said it all yourself. A good way to build a community is people like gifts. So, if you want to engage with people, maybe give them some free stuff is a great way to build things up. Make a competition. When you hit X amount of subscribers, that they get a free gift. There's lots of different ways to encourage growth, and it doesn't always have to be. And of course, the information, the stuff like that has to be there, but you're in the gifting industry and you may be able to gift someone something, a reward of some description for hitting 1,000 people, 5,000, 10,000. And, these kind of things can help accelerate your growth. And even for me, when I hit 45,000 YouTube subscribers, I was lucky enough that one of my friends who owns a tool called SEO Autopilot said you can give away a lifetime license for free when you hit that amount of subscribers. So it was obviously promotional for him, promotional for me, and it also kept that community engaged because as human beings, we all do like free things. Um, so you're also wanting tips on do's and don'ts while building a community for the first time. There's no point in building a community and not engaging with them. That is really, really important. I've seen so many people look to build a Facebook group and they get, 2, 3, 4,000 really quickly, but then they don't engage. They're not consistent with the videos or the information that they're putting out there. So I think if you're going to do it, do not do it half-heartedly. I decided to build the YouTube thing mainly because COVID was around, and I had a lot of time in my hands, and I felt at that point I had been speaking for 3 or 4 years, and I was getting more of an email following and everything else. So it probably was the next logical step as well for me. But I think timing is key as well. You know, don't try and build a community if you don't actually have a following, if you're not yet ready to share, some, business tips or whatever it might be. If you're going to be a young guy building a community, for the sheer hell of building a community, you might be doing the wrong thing, because why would people look at you for advice? Sometimes your focus should mainly be on your business. And once you've got success, case studies, and everything else, and you're willing to share, then that's probably the right time to build a community. So don't do it for the sheer hell of doing it. And do not have a YouTube channel, for example, if your business, if all your competition don't have a YouTube channel, because in the gifting community, what I would say to you is there's probably certain platforms that might work for you and certain ones that don't. Now, it's the same with me. TikTok, for example, didn't really work for me because more people are, dancing around on there than talking about SEO. And obviously, the fact on TikTok you can only speak for a minute when SEO is such a big subject, a minute is not enough. So the only guy I've ever known to have success in TikTok is that guy Digital Pratik, who's based out in India. He's massive on it, but
Yeah.
again, I reversed engineered and looked at that guy because I was inspired by Digital Pratik. I started TikTok when I left India, and I seen that guy had at the time 1.2 million followers. Now I tried it. I've got 20,000 subscribers, nowhere near what Digital Pratik has. Now, I have looked at it time and time again. Digital Pratik has something that I don't have, which is he does a lot of his stuff in Hindi, and I can never do it in Hindi. And I think, for to capture the massive Indian audience, you have to have that, and they ain't going to buy into me. So because half of India don't understand what I'm saying, so TikTok's not a platform for me. So but the reason I'm saying this is because TikTok works for Digital Pratik doesn't mean it works for me. There is an
Yeah.
underlying reason why it worked for him and it doesn't work for me. He was in way before me. He speaks, multiple languages, and he has that following of giving short, sharp tips. He's not an SEO as such. He's more of a marketer, and that's what he told me. He says, "I'm not an SEO guy." He says, "I'm just a guy that he's got camera people following him around and just gives short, sharp tips." And that's great. That's success. Massive, kudos to Digital Pratik. But by the same token, Instagram's another one where if you were into fashion, you're probably going to get more traction from Instagram than you might on a Facebook group because fashion is more visual, images are more important. So, again, if you're in the gifting community, because me, has success on YouTube or Facebook groups or whatever doesn't mean that it's going to be successful for you. So I wasted a lot of time and effort, looking at TikTok and reverse engineering it and trying to understand why I wasn't getting the same traction as Digital Critique. And it wasn't down to anything other than, I've got this, similar knowledge to Digital Critique. I should be able to have some success on there, but he's just a well-known guy in India. They love Hindi, they love this, that, and the next thing, and you just can't compete. So when you're building a community, don't just dive in and work on platforms because someone else in a different industry has had success with it. You need to look at your competition and see what is working really well for guys that are really close to you. Now, Digital Critique's a digital marketer. I'm an SEO guy. We're not the same type of people. And that is where it's really important, because people expect me to give minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes worth of tutorials. It's just never going to work in TikTok. So yeah, just that's a couple of tips there.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong point, that finding the right place to build your community is extremely important. For some, it would be Instagram because it's a highly visual product and you need to go on Instagram and build your community. If it's into gifting and you have really nice boxes, then you can have a YouTube unboxing channel. I don't know why, but a lot of people love unboxing stuff, and there are massively successful channels that are just unboxing stuff. I mean, I wouldn't even imagine that so many people just watch people open something from a package. So I think finding that right mix, whether a text-based platform or a visual platform or a video-based platform or a platform like TikTok that has 1 minute videos, I don't know, 1 minute or how many seconds videos work well for you. I think that's very important to understand.
Yeah.
In case of gifting, I also believe that the platform shouldn't be around um, or yeah, shouldn't be around the brand or selling, but it should be around a theme. So perhaps it could be something about, if at all it is related to gifting, perhaps we can have something around um, sharing special moments with your loved ones. Could be a community. I'm just saying something out of my head. So it needs to be around a broader theme that involves gift rather than gifting community, because I will not as a user feel like going and engaging with a community that is called gifting community. I might not be
Mm.
able to relate. If there is an emotion, underlying emotion, I think that's where people try to relate. Or if you are a person like Craig, we relate to Craig's brand. In that case, we are going and engaging with his stories, with his brand, with what we see and know about him. So I think that's important. Some kind of driver. And like Craig very well pointed out, even if you're expert in something, like Craig is in SEO, TikTok was not working for him. So I think that's. I think Saurabh is saying thank you for clarifying on this bit. And with that, we have another very important question. I feel that this is, how does one set the tone of the community? Is it different for different platforms? For example, WhatsApp versus Facebook? I think a very good question. Yeah.
For me, I wouldn't say the tone is different across different platforms. I think people buy into you as a person, or whatever it might be. Now, I'm not going to act differently on YouTube than I would in person or on a Facebook group. I am what I am. I'm that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what people buy into. They might think, I'm a nice guy, I like his story or whatever. But in terms of tone, I don't really adapt for that. If I was to meet, Nidhi, for example, in India, I'm not going to be any different than I am right now with her. That there is no change. Whether you meet me in the pub or you meet me on YouTube or you go onto Facebook, if you ask me a question, I'll give you an honest answer. If I don't like your question, I'll tell you it's shit. That type of thing. Being honest and I've got my own way of working, and sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind to certain people as well. But what I've basically built my community around is trying to be an honest guy who'll say what he thinks, and I think that that is the way I am in life anyway. In general, I've not adapted a persona. So I would always say people buy into people. Do not change what you are for a platform or for any other reason. I think, some people will hate you, some people will like you, and that's just the way it is. Some people won't like your approach. I talk a lot about black hat SEO things, and some people love it and some people absolutely hate it. So, and not everyone can be liked by everyone, and that is just the nature of the beast. And just be yourself. That's all you can ever be.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I think just that, just how in a more public setup we behave a little different, but our tone doesn't change. So if I'm taking my Facebook content to LinkedIn, I might just change a little bit of how I am putting stuff, because a different kind of audience would be looking, but my tone will remain the same. The brand Nidhi, the person Nidhi will remain the same. Just looking at the audience, I might take away some casual words just to fit the channel, but the tone is the underlying, I think, uh, person that remains the same across the platforms. But Craig, how do you actually set the tone of the community? How do you, let me call it, how do you build the culture of that community? How do you bring those shared values that, you know, I know you do regular live sessions around cash flow. I think
Yeah.
that kind of sets the tone for your community, that you will talk about business and you will not just talk about SEO, you will talk about business. So how do you figure out these nuanced things or elements through which you set the tone or culture for the community? How did you get to start cash flow digital?
So it was just a trial and error thing, and I didn't set out to have that specifically. I do know that in the SEO industry, you there are many other things that we can talk about, such as cash flow, building a business, processes, hiring and firing people, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Many of us in the SEO industry don't set out to be a businessman. Somehow you end up owning a business if you're good at SEO. So you set out doing a job, and you might be in an agency, and before you know it, you leave that agency and you have staff and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it can be horrible. One day to have left your job, and you work on your own, and then you hire someone, and you hire someone, and you hire someone else, and before you know it, you've got a 5-person agency, and you're like, shit. I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about paying the tax man or accountancy, and I was that guy. I had no clue. Like, someone said, you better get an accountant, and I'm phoning around accountants and stuff like, hey man, I'm making this amount of money, help me out, and you learn on the way. So I think what I'm trying to be on my channels is something more than an SEO, because there are so many other little quirks round about it that I've got experience in. I didn't have an accountant. I had to go and find one. I didn't understand tax and money, and also, things that I've done. I've made a lot of money, lost a lot of it, made more money again, lost a lot of it. And it's really important to talk about, when you make money from SEO, how you invest it, what you invest it in. And I think, all of these kind of things, all are still very, very, very related to SEO in general. But investing in affiliate websites, investing in digital assets, where do you invest your money for the long term game? I've done a lot of black hat SEO, for example, and made a shit ton of money. Now, again, I've lost some of it, but if you're going to set off with a strategy like mine where you do black hat SEO and you make good money, that money has then got to be made for the longer term. You've got to invest it into something more sustainable, because if you do
Right.
only do black hat, you're always going to be that guy that earns money, earns money,
Yeah.
loses it all, becomes bankrupt. And again, with my experience, it is really important where you push that money to, what you invest in. And, again, also when I was building an agency, I stupidly hired local people in the UK. Now, the cost of hiring a person in the UK, I could hire 5 Indians for the same price it would cost me for one person in the UK. Now, it was probably ego for me when I was hiring people in the UK. I wanted to tell my friends that I had 10 people in the office or whatever. But a much smarter way of working would have been to outsource it to different parts of the world that have lower costs of living, that are probably better at the job anyway. So delegation, outsourcing, all of that stuff was all stuff I had massive mistakes with in the beginning. And again, that's why I think it's really important to emphasize those points, because if you can hire one lazy guy in the UK or 5 hungry Indians, and I'm only saying Indians because this is, primarily an Indian channel, then what would you do? I'd rather hire five hungry Indians, to be honest, and get more value out of those 5 people than hiring one lazy git. So that is why I try and expand on those experiences as well, because I think it wouldn't be a fair reflection of my career or experience just to talk about basic SEO. I've got a lot of business experience. I've invested in a lot of stuff. I know how to grow. I know how to scale. I know how to make money. I know how to lose money. And again, trying to relay that back to other people who are starting off in that journey, and hopefully you guys don't lose as much money as I've lost, and you can learn from those mistakes. Then I've done a great job at that point, and that's why I try and test different stuff. But to answer your question, I don't set out with a specific, like cash flow digital. I've tried so many different things on the YouTube channel. I also used to do a thing
Like
with
share your sponsorship. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the sponsorship in a minute. But I've also on my YouTube channel had failures. I had Itamar on my show, and we used to do a regular show called Website Audits every week, and people just didn't like it. They're just like, you're saying the same shit every week. Like, you're just looking at a website and saying that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. That's not probably a fair reflection on my experience either. So I stopped that show and I said to Itamar, you're maybe better doing that show on your own channel. But for me, it's not what my audience want. So they want something else. And the cash flow digital thing works really well. I've got a Wednesday show with Chris Palmer, which is just straight up questions and answers. That works really well. And then around that, I've got some other funny stuff and various other bits and bobs. But to answer your question about the sponsorship, I got a good sponsorship deal in September or October this year, because of the growth I've got and the community that I have. And the big thing I want to emphasize here is the community. So the following that I've got is a specific type of person in the SEO industry. And the company that sponsored me is ODYS Global. And the reason they sponsored me is because I fit their profile very, very well. So investing in age domains is what, well, they sell age domains and done for you affiliate websites. Being someone who talks a lot about investing your money into age domains or affiliate websites or digital assets really fits in with the profile of their company. And because I've got such a following in that industry, it's the perfect audience for them. So they want to sponsor the channel. Well, they did want to sponsor the channel, and they do sponsor the channel, and they get a lot of brand exposure. They get a lot of sales from it. They get a lot of kudos in the community, and it also allows me to educate people further on their services. So that is, just one way of monetizing your YouTube channel, is getting a sponsor. And if, for example, if you sell, WordPress websites or whatever, someone out there will probably sponsor your channel. If you've got that audience, someone out there is probably more than happy to sponsor your channel. If you've got the right following, you don't have to monetize it through AdSense or that you get from YouTube. That's chicken feed money. It's not enough money to earn a good living. You want to make sure that you can monetize it in multiple other ways, and the best way would be to get a sponsor. And that sponsor came out of the dark for me. I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't why I set up a YouTube channel, but because the profile fitted, then that was it. So it worked out well.
Okay. I think I would want you to share your screen also and show the sponsorship. But on the side, I'm also taking a question. It's a follow up on what you said. You are saying that the same shit every week. I don't like it. Someone said to you about the series, SEO audit series. So how did you get that precious feedback from dislikes or comments? Or by guessing on what might not be working here? I think it's an
It,
important question because I think communities act as a feedback loop as well, which
yeah.
doesn't really happen when people do not have a community. You can't go out and ask customers; they might just all come back with negative feedbacks. But when you have a community, you can expect a very constructive feedback. You can be very it's like getting into a room where people are actually there to help you out. How did you get this side of very honest feedback, and how did you go about correcting your actions?
So on that, you get feedback through the likes and the comments and everything else. But I've also got people that I know and trust, who I regularly talk to in the community, and they will also give you feedback saying that ain't working, that's garbage. And so close friends, or close SEO friends, if you like, give you that information. But also the numbers in itself, you can see if something is engaged or not when you release it. So when you're releasing something and it normally gets, say, 5,000 views, and you're releasing something else and it only gets 900, fundamentally, that you have a problem, and you can see that problem there, and you try that week on week on week, it's quite clear to see that the figures speak for themselves. But that's when I will also start asking questions. Listen, you'll always get negative comments, so if you're only to base it on the comments and likes on the channel, then you've got people who hate your guts and stuff like that, who dislike and say bad stuff about you. I don't really take note of that as such. I've got guys that I would just go to and just say, listen, what do you actually think of this? And they'll say, Craig, it's just garbage. But why would you do audits? And one of the other things I would say on the audit thing is, I done a SEMrush series with a guy called Ross Tavendale, and that's all we done every week on SEMrush was site audits. So again, I'd done it for about a year on SEMrush as well. So people are sick, and they know what my view on websites when I audit them. They know how I look at websites. So my community were looking for something completely different, because I'd just done it for too long, and it was becoming repetitive, and I wasn't enjoying it myself either. So that also tells you you've got to
Sure.
be honest with yourself as well.
Yeah, I think we have, I know a couple of community managers themselves on our live. So Mrinal has asked this question: will the offline community engagement drive still remain relevant, or is it worth that investment in the digital era, since online engagement will probably boom? more in post pandemic era as well. So
I think,
offline versus online.
I mean,
Uh,
I decided. So I'll answer this like I used to do a lot of offline engagement. I used to do local meetups. I used to speak at conferences. I used to do a whole bunch of different stuff that you would consider offline. Because the pandemic came, I decided to do a lot more videos, a lot more on YouTube. Now, could I have done that before? Yes, I could have. Did I have enough time? Absolutely not. But I was doing really well speaking at conferences and doing local meetups and doing all of that kind of stuff. And that's why I didn't have the time to do it online. There's only so much you can do. But to answer this particular question, I would say you can do both. Try and do both if you can, if time allows, because I've had massive growth on the stuff that I've got online. And I was already relatively well known in the industry purely because of the offline stuff I was doing. So, can you further enhance stuff by doing it online? Yes. And I think going forward with the pandemic, the world has changed. More people are going to be doing online conferences. More people are consuming YouTube content. More people are working from home. The world is never going to be the same as it was after this pandemic in terms of working online and stuff. Because I think Zoom calls and everything else has been a massive success. And certainly in the UK, some businesses have actually given up their offices and will work full time forevermore from home. So I think online is certainly something you should dive into and do a hell of a lot more of.
yeah, and I think we have a natural follow up question to that, since you said that going online and being virtual is going to stay and in fact grow. So Neha is asking, and I know Neha is again a community manager, and perhaps in fact she can, Mrinal and Neha both can add, in fact add more value here, and I would want both of you to let us know your thoughts as well. And Neha is asking, how do you think the landscape of community going to change in 2021? One thing you have already mentioned, that it's gonna be huge. If X number of people are doing it, it's going to be X plus plus. But what are some trends we will see? Uh, and just to add my 2 cents here, I think because I have been discussing this with my community, how we should plan for 2021. I think one thing that will increase is community engagement, and that's something that I'm increasingly seeing year over year. I've seen Facebook bring in, and in fact, Craig, you can back me up, that Facebook brought in a lot more power for community managers or Facebook group managers by giving us ability to ask questions before taking users in. You know, the filtration criteria is I think super important. I have a really small community as compared to yours, Craig, and I think you will be able to help us better and understand how you do it with a large community. But with filtering criterias, we are able to add much more valuable people to community. And I think platforms are also pushing us to drive engagement
Yeah.
in our communities, so that people actually feel the being part of the community. And I think engagement through quizzes, polls, all these are traditional way of doing, asking questions, traditional way of doing. And I was speaking to a friend who was talking about VR, virtual reality. I think this is a way forward. I don't know if it is going to come immediately in 2021, but I know there are companies who are working on VR formats and engagement through VR. The technology is so heavy to integrate on social right now, but I think it's going to be in future. Um, with that, over to you, Craig. I would want to hear from you
Um,
on how, what do you
it's
see in 2021?
I mean, I don't see obviously VR being out that quick, to be honest. But as you say, you can, or the social media platforms like Facebook, for example, are adding that filtering system where you can ask questions, you can do this, that, the next thing to be able to try and get the right people into your community. And certain filters, like if someone's just joined Facebook that day or in the past few days, then you probably don't want them in your group. They're probably there to spam, troll, or something else. So you've got these good things, but for me, algorithmically, the platforms themselves are leaning more towards engagement. And here is one little tip, and you've probably seen this. So if you engage on LinkedIn, if I was to go onto LinkedIn and put a link to YouTube, does that particular post do that well? It doesn't, because I'm driving people off of the platform onto YouTube. So they're not going to show that to a wider audience. And I think, people are digging deeper into the algorithms that are behind the platforms, whether it be TikTok, YouTube, whatever. And one of the things that works across all of the platforms is obviously they want you to retain the community on the platform. So bear that in mind. Do not focus on your YouTube and then go on to LinkedIn and try and drive everyone into your YouTube. That isn't that effective. And what you happen to see is, if I was to go and just upload a video to LinkedIn, for example, then it's going to get a lot more impressions, a lot more interaction, because LinkedIn are then saying, well, he's not driving people off, so let's give this out to the fuller audience. And so I think that's really important. And I think that happens across the platforms. And what I've also seen over not just with Google, but this is also in social media, engagement is the single biggest and most important thing, whether you want to rank or grow. Now, on SEO, for example, engagement signals, driving people to your page. Google take engagement signals and click-through rate really importantly and rank your page accordingly. It's the same with YouTube. The more watch time you get, the more, the length of the watch time comes into play. So if you're giving out good content that's engaging, you are then going to get higher rankings, higher everything. So I think, if you're going to be big into SEO, engagement is the single biggest player in all of that happening. And if you do it all properly, then you're going to get exponential growth, because, again, unfortunately, this pandemic is not really clearing up that well. And I think, it might even be halfway into next year before we even go back to anything offline. So I think what it's shown me is I've missed out on a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity online. And that's why I decided at the start of the pandemic, grab the bull by the horns and see how much growth and how much more exposure I can get using these online channels. And I've made some mistakes. I've done the thing, like I was doing a lot of YouTube videos and I was trying to use LinkedIn and everything else to force people across. But if you look at my recent videos, you'll see that I have natively uploaded them to that platform and let people consume everything on those different platforms. And that is really the key to the whole
Yeah.
success.
Yeah, and in fact, I have seen Craig your journey, and I think I'm on the same path, and I will start doing the same thing. Thanks for the tip. Then instead of going on LinkedIn and talking about your YouTube channel and try to push LinkedIn users to YouTube, which by the way, when you put your YouTube link, it says go and click here and then check the video on YouTube. It opens on a random browser and it doesn't even open on the native YouTube platform. So you're not able to like, you have to sign in. Who will sign in? Because you don't remember your password, it is always logged in. So it becomes a challenge to drive traffic. In fact, LinkedIn gives you a little reach. If you post it on Facebook, it will give you zero reach if you post a YouTube link. So I think there was a golden nugget that you mentioned, that create for that platform. Don't try to exploit the platform, because platforms hate it when you try to exploit them. And I will take it in my consideration, and just like you, I will make LinkedIn native lives. Thanks for that tip. I wanted to hear it from someone, I guess. uh, we have some comments from Negha and Rinal. I will read those out. Neha is saying to constantly think about how do they add I think there is a previous comment. Yeah. I think since massive number of people come online thanks to the pandemic, people with various ideologies come to your platform. It is going to be imperative for community builders and organizations to constantly think about how do they identify and retain people who match your ideologies and keep the right tone going. Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair and correct point. We have more and more people and more sorts of people seen online now who might not be as online as earlier. Like you yourself started your YouTube channel because you had more bandwidth. Uh, she's also adding, we got to ensure we are constantly thinking about how more authentic and factual content is created. And I know where Neha is coming from. She works for a community where they constantly fight to keep the quality of content right and keep the trollers and spammers away. And I know you have had experiences where you have picked those trollers and spammers and called them out and said, boss, this is not what you should be doing. And I think it sends a right message. And I would love to hear from you, but I will just quickly read all the comments. We have Mrinal, who is again a community manager for a large community out there. She says community engagement will evolve massively in terms of tools like polls, reactions, auto response. I think Instagram and WhatsApp. In fact, Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp are seeing a lot of evolution around auto responses and those quick links where you type a alphabet and you can send X message or Y message. Yeah, like we have on LinkedIn, she's saying. Yes, and how a platform want to drive um, their core mission and principle. Um, as community builders and platform facilitators, I think many communities will now acknowledge the need of a balanced set of moderation that keep diversity and aspects in check. And I think it's very right, Craig. And I would want to hear from you because because you are also present across platforms, it becomes really difficult to do justice to each platform and create content. And you yourself said in the conversation, in that case, add more people to help you manage the community.
Yeah.
But until and unless you know those people well, they end up becoming a spammer themselves. How do you find, especially when it's a large community, how do you find the right set of people, or how do you keep the community open but still spam free? uh, Thoughts from you.
I think people like the girls that are in um the channel are saying you need community managers, you need members of staff to help you with that stuff. It's impossible to do it yourself if you're building a large community. I mean, people are entitled to their opinion, and it's always good to have opinion, whether you like it or not. But for whatever reason, people are crazy and they want to be, vile. We've all seen the horrible things that you can get online as well, where people are, be rude, just downright rude. And that is important to clean that up. You don't want negativity. I don't mind someone saying, Craig, I don't agree with what you said, because this way is better. I think, debate and opinion is always welcome. But when you've got someone who says, Craig, you're a piece of shit or something like that, then, I have a massive problem with that. And what I tend to do is I'll go after the person that says that to me. I will, and as Nemo or Nemil has said, I will call them out publicly, and I'll tweet their company or whatever it might be. I will expose that fucker, because that is what you have to do. You've got to fight fire with fire sometimes. I'm not going to sit there and just block it out and that's it. I will make sure that they pay for it, and and they may lose their job for it. They may do this, they may do that. But I think sometimes, and this is maybe just in my nature, but it's sometimes easier to ignore and just block them. But sometimes someone needs to teach them a lesson, and that's why I do regularly not troll them, expose trollers, and it's the only way they're going to stop. They'll think twice about doing it to the next guy if you expose them for what they are. And at the end of the day, we all know trolls are just jealous people, faceless, and don't like to see people having any degree of success. And when you've got success, you're going to attract a lot more of that stuff. But build a team, get community managers, get your friends to help moderate stuff or whatever it might be. But the tools themselves, like StreamYard, for example, you've got the ability to just block those people very quickly if you're on a live webinar and people are trolling. And the only thing that's going to shut them up is blocking, block, 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 block. And it's a lot of work. But keep your community clean. And, I've had people threatening to cut, my son's throat online before. It can get really, really bad where people will say, I'm going to cut your son's throat. Why would you ever say that to me? I've not done anything that warrants that. I talk about SEO. I'm not personally attacking anyone. And but people always will stoop to a low level to get a reaction out of you. And I know people that use negativity to try and grow their own audiences as well. So they'll try and say, let's go and troll Neil Patel or something, and we'll give them some shit. Now, if Neil Patel was to give them the time of day, then that person's going to be put in the spotlight and they're potentially going to get growth. So what we need to try and do with these type of people is not give them the platform to grow. You've just got to stifle them out at the very, very beginning. And, maybe they'll think about it and go away and build their own community based on success and positive stuff rather than, being well known for being a troll, because it's that is what it is. But as I say, I've had some serious stuff where I've had to get the police involved. I have been attacked at a conference
Oh my
before.
gosh.
So
Oh
well,
my
not
God.
attacked, but they tried to attack me, and that's just a part of reality. If you
You
put your
mean attack physically or virtually?
no physically,
Oh
physically,
my God.
people
Oh,
coming for me, and yeah, it happens, but you've got a whole bunch of people out there who are all crazy, crazy people. The world is full of, listen, what I would say is 95, maybe even higher, 98% of people I have met are the nicest people you could ever meet. But there's always going to be a small amount of
yeah.
idiots out there. When I went to India, for example, the amount of people who then said to me after that, come back to India, you can stay in my house, come and meet my family, um, you know, and all of those positives outweigh the negatives altogether. But there is that underlying negativity, and like the girls in the chat there, like Mirinal and stuff. These community managers and people to do that is really important. Weed them out and just employ someone, outsource that stuff, whatever, and get community managers involved, because these guys are doing all that kind of stuff and trying to keep the peace. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I was not aware that people go to an extent of physically harming. I think when you are virtually so strong, and in fact, that the the amount of people that love you and the amount of people they who come to troll you because of seeing your success, I think is both high. Perhaps that's what you have witnessed, and I hope uh, you were safe through this physical attack, whoever did so, and I'm so sorry to hear that. But yeah, I totally, and like Neville said, I totally love the way you call these people out, because it is important to send a message to community that you can't go around doing such kind of bullshit in the community. There are people who are taking notice of it. There are people who are calling it out, And if you don't stop doing something like this, there are gonna be serious implications of this kind of act. And I think that's a very um, empowering stance that you take. It inspires people like me and other people who build community to take such stances. And I think we have Nihal saying, OMG, so relate to that experience Craig shared. You got to be prepared for all people to not like you when you call out the troller or the staff.
Yep.
Yeah. Mrinal is adding, love Craig's response there. In 2021 and beyond, it will be vital for most platform facilitators to empower user community builders to have accountability towards their content engagement. No troll, please.
No trolls. Love it.
Yeah. um, yeah, and I think about time to take SEO questions. I think our users were eagerly waiting for us to address SEO questions. I am very mindful, Craig, we are already 6 minutes about the time set. Are you fine with taking last few
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm in no rush.
thank
So
you so much. Yeah, so Vidya is asking, each and every person, especially who want to reach bigger and bigger audience, should know about SEO. Will help, I guess.
not necessarily. Absolutely, not necessarily. You don't have to be an SEO to get reach to a bigger audience. You need to understand social media. Now, SEO will of course help, if you want to rank blog posts and rank your videos and all of that stuff. Of course it will help, but it's not the be all and end all. Look at Digital Pratik. He is the perfect example of a guy who isn't an SEO that just is mainly well known because he uses social media so well. So does he need SEO to get that exposure? Absolutely not. So he's the perfect guy I would be looking to say SEO is not the be all and end all of reaching the big audience. That chap has reached obscene amounts of audiences cleverly using social media.
Yeah, I think that I agree to your point. And we have another question. What are the good practices to keep in mind while creating a new website with respect to SEO? I think you might have seen this question coming in again and again. Yeah, but
Good practices would be to do the basics properly. I think when it comes to SEO, people are expecting or miss out on a lot of the basic fundamentals, optimizing their content properly. A lot of people, are rushing around. So, for example, people start a website and they feel that they need to get 50 or 100 blog posts out there to become a good SEO. Now, if you had 50 that were really well optimized, you'd do a lot better than someone who done 100 who didn't really do the job properly. So for me, every time I audit someone's website, the basic fundamentals are not there, the processes are not right. And by that, what I mean is, even something as simple as adding content to a website, is the URL good? Is the title tag good? Are your subheadings good? Also, what are you doing as part of that process? Do you use Surfer SEO or Page Optimizer Pro to look at what the top 10 search results are getting or doing to rank well for that given search term? Because so many people just say, write me 1,000 words about, a topic or whatever it might be. Who says it's 1,000 words? Who said 1,000 words is the key amount of words on a page to rank well? Now, without digging deeper and using these tools where it will say for SEO services daily, for example, we want to see who ranks in the top 10, how many words they've got on average, how many subheadings, what type of words are they using. You use semantically related keywords and all that kind of stuff. And people are not doing the very, very basics properly. And that is why SEO is, there's a lot of guys looking for shortcuts. There's a lot of guys that focus heavily on site speed. Now, I'm not dismissing site speed or technical SEO or anything like that. But if you're going to spend days trying to change your speed from 1.6 seconds to 1.4 seconds, and you're only going to spend an hour on your content, then you're doing something fundamentally wrong, because the main aspects of SEO are content and links. And that hasn't changed for many, many years. Also, using social media to drive in click through rate and engagement is a massive thing. But people get bogged down on those small little details on site speed or, you know, various other little bits, and they don't actually do the basics properly. They don't spend enough time on it. So, time allocation to what actually moves the needle is really important. And as an SEO, you will know that content moves the needle. Optimizing that content, having header tags, subheaders, and all of that kind of stuff is the difference between your page ranking for 10 keywords or 1,010 keywords. So do the basics properly is what I would always keep in mind.
Thanks, Craig. I think you very well summarized it quickly. We have another question from Neha. She's asking, with the SEO market so crowded, with so many people offering their services, how do you separate value from chef to get the right SEO consultant for your business?
I think quality always rises to the top. There are so many people that call themselves SEOs. The reality is there's not actually that many good SEOs out there. And I think you can tell from the confidence when someone speaks. You can look at their case studies. And, what I would be looking for if I want an SEO consultant, I would be checking out their profile, their case studies, and stuff like that. Now, that cannot go wrong. You can't fake that stuff. If someone's got a good website that ranks really well, it can't be faked. So I would always be looking at, can they rank themselves? Do they practice what they preach? And you can also tell by the way someone talks, the vocabulary that they use, whether they're good or not. And there's so many people out there, 95% of SEOs really aren't SEOs. They're just guys that like SEO or tell people they're SEOs. There's only a small minority of people who can actually move the needle and make real money when it comes to websites. So look for that 5%, and you've got to sometimes dig deep. But look at conferences, look at various other bits and bobs. There's a whole bunch of people that do know what they're doing. But what I'd also say is, when you're looking for a consultant, do not just look for a generic consultant or an SEO consultant. I may be really bad at schema, for example, and I want someone to help me with schema. I don't look for an SEO consultant. I want someone who specializes and does schema very well. And I think many people in this industry do one thing very well. They do link building very well. They do content very well. So it's not an overall SEO consultant that might be able to help you, because an SEO consultant will still have weaknesses. So if you want to improve, identify your weaknesses and then go and find the schema guy, the right schema guy that can do the job properly. And then once you get that done, you can then go and look for someone who can consult you on YouTube or whatever other weaknesses your business has. So look very specifically for someone rather than a general SEO consultant.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Greg. I'm just going through the final round to see if we have Rohit saying loving this conversation. Um, all right, I think we have covered all the SEO questions as well. Yeah. All right, Greg. I think with this we come to the end of this video, overshot by 15 minutes, and I really thank you. I think it was a really insightful conversation with me. I'm for sure going to bring some positive change in the way I am dealing with communities right now, with uh, with just to start with, I will start creating native content for my LinkedIn. And I'll pick your brains for that, how you are doing, what platform you're using to make stuff live across platforms, and how is it working out for you.
No
Um,
worries.
yeah, and I think there is one more comment. All right, last question. I see a lot of keyword spam in the fat footer.
In the fat footer. Um, yeah, do not do that. You don't need to spam your footer with keywords or landing pages or whatever. It's enough to have them in your news section or whatever. You do not have to use your footer any longer. Anything that's in a footer or a sidebar is given less weight than it would be in a navigation bar or contextually in the main body of your website. So just don't do it. I mean, if it's navigational, you've got some sub pages like your privacy policy or whatever it might be, terms and conditions. Have them in the footer, but those people who do the stuff like we done back in 2010, spamming the footer full of all these postcodes or landing pages, it's just not effective anymore, and it looks horrendous.
Yeah, I agree to that point. It looks really desperate to do SEO. Uh, yeah, I think, yeah, it's a wrap. Thank you so much, Craig. This was super helpful. Mrinal is saying, and you used so much, Craig and Nidhi, for bringing this to us. Vijayaraj a lot, Craig and Nidhi. All right, Craig, thank you so much. Thank you for waking up so early for us and joining us for this session and helping us with all the insightful stuff. I
No,
think we will see you back in on the channel sometime again if you
yeah,
are available sometime. Yeah.
always.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers.